Okay, I'd personally like to apologize for the last couple videos on the Game Boy Advance and Xbox launches. It was a real downer, and it'd be a shame if it discourages or scares anyone off from taking part in system launches in the future. Things will be lightening up a bit as we move on to the second half of the most expensive week of my life up to that point, the Nintendo GameCube launch. This would provide me with one system launch experience I had yet to be a part of, camping. And not to get ahead of myself, but it also served to send the 6th gen launches out on a positive note with some happy, mostly trouble-free gaming. As a contrast from the Xbox, which had me interested from the start but went through a launch disaster that turned me away for a time, I had a rocky start with the GameCube from the time it was unveiled, and only warmed up to it a little as the launch approached. When Nintendo finally showed us all the Dolphin, aka the Star Cube, aka the GameCube, the first thing my eyes landed on was the Fisher-Price-ass controller. How could it not be? I'm a fighting gamer to the end, and that peg was an abomination to nearly everything I buy a game console for. It was so bad, in fact, that I was close to skipping the launch outright, in spite of everything that I've said up to this point about system launches. This controller did absolutely nothing to draw me closer to a company that I was basically estranged from for the past 3 years. Then E3 2001 rolled around and Wave Race Blue Storm was shown off. I could have held out, no matter how fascinated I was by eventual December releases Super Smash Bros. Melee and Pikmin, but then they had to go and cough up a new Wave Race. Damn it. Wave Race Blue Storm's announcement for the North American launch was the exact moment I made the decision to take that temporary holiday job out at KB Toys so I could financially accommodate 2 system launches. It was an extreme measure at the time, as it would also implicitly put me on the hook to cover both launches at Game Addict's network and pick up some holiday retail shifts, but I was down with it if it meant getting my hands on some new Wave Race. Pre-order plans actually didn't happen this time. KB Toys decided to lay down a massive price gouge with an overpriced forced bundle with 3 pre-selected games that were not Wave Race, specifically Madden NFL 2002, Star Wars Rogue Leader, and Luigi's Mansion, and a memory card for well over $400. They were easily pulling down over $50 in raw profit just off the sheer difference between MSRP and what I call CSRP, explained in the 15.1 video, to say nothing of the profits that stores typically make off consoles and games. To make matters worse, since it was all being sold as one bundle under one price, the 10% employee discount on software did not apply. That left only one option, and it was one that gave me good reason to be skeptical. Despite the disaster of October 26, 2000, I would take the Saturday prior to launch off of work and camp outside Walmart, which at that point had become a 24/7 supercenter, so it was going to be a midnight launch. It was an enormous pain in the ass, but it was the only way to get a GameCube guaranteed without taking a bundle and or a price gouge, so that was the plan, so help me. Thanks to the ordeal throughout the 48 hours prior with my faulty launch Xbox as noted in the previous video, I was already supremely pissed when I arrived at Walmart at 7 a.m. with my 2-liter Coke, my 2 cans of Pringles, and my GBA, which for all its faults was fully usable outdoors during the day. I wasn't angry over anything that happened at Walmart, mind you. I was just in a generally volatile mood over having to do this for potentially another faulty console. This was Nintendo's first system that used moving parts after all, and my faith was limited. I also thought that showing up at 7 a.m. when Walmart was reported in the local paper to start putting the chairs outside the store would guarantee me the number 1 chair, but that one was already occupied by a middle-aged woman who had apparently waited all night for the chairs to even be brought out. Generally, I'm not a fan of the soccer mom stereotype, who this person clearly was, but that was damned respectable. A lot of people camp systems, but I'd never heard of anyone camping camp before. And that's above and beyond the call of duty for a gamer, let alone a gamer's relatives. Again, respect. Ultimately, I landed in the number 4 seat and stayed fairly antisocial for the first couple hours, keeping largely to myself. That's just my nature. Still, it soon became apparent that I wasn't the only one who thought to bring a GBA, and before we all knew it, we were all playing some 4-player Link Cable F-Zero with, I want to say, the 3, 7, and 12 seats. It's a great way to pass the time, absolutely solidifies 2D F-Zero as some of the best portable gaming around at the time. We got through pretty much the whole morning that way, taking in some solid racing and snacking it up while waiting for midnight to roll around. One guy went inside and bought a second controller before getting in line, and most of us in the line got some hands-on time with it. Nope, still didn't like it. It was about 1 p.m. when I started to experience the flaw in my go-it-alone camping strategy. I didn't exactly maintain a good solid foods to fluids ratio, and luckily my mother was off work by then, and the guy in the number 3 chair had a cell phone that he let me use. A phone call, a bus ride, and about 30 minutes later my mom arrived to take the number 4 seat for a while, and I went into the store in an uncomfortable hurry. Unfortunately, as mentioned earlier, the store had been remodeled into a Walmart supercenter, and the restrooms were not where they were prior to the reconstruction. Outstanding. After frantically scouring the entire perimeter of the store, I finally made it. To this day, I swear I could hear an angelic choir as I looked up at the word restrooms. Before going back outside, I figured it was time to check out what had hit the shelves in the several hours I had been there. Unfortunately, Wave Race Blue Storm had yet to arrive, but I did grab a memory card 59 before going back outside. I was kind of in a hurry to grab one of those because of how the PS2 launch went. That afternoon, despite my having solved the bathroom problem, was not as kind to me as the morning was. The bane of my existence, children, had arrived, and they were being loud, annoying, and irritating as only children can be. There were some blindly outspoken fanboys, wannabe skaters, and other such causes of high blood pressure out in full force. Why, oh fucking why, did Nintendo have to launch on a weekend? Another benefit to calling my mother in as backup was that I could now take advantage of the Taco Bell that the North Logan Walmart has in its own parking lot. By the time I finished my meal, which took me less time to consume than it did to procure, someone walked out of the store with a copy of Wave Race. Another seat swap quickly took place, and I made tracks once again for the home electronics department. Wave Race was indeed in stock, and I snapped it up, leaving myself with about $270 after the card and the game. That was a rather surprising figure. I hadn't done the math between Xbox launch a couple days prior and my GameCube expenses to be, but I thought I'd be cutting it a lot closer than I did. As the sun finally set and our collective vision restored itself to a reliable state, we got word that we would be allowed to take our numbers from our chairs and go inside at 10 p.m., which was an unexpected and highly welcome surprise. It must have been around 5:30 p.m. at this point, and it was already starting to get unreasonably cold outside. We passed the next 4.5 hours rather efficiently, all things considered. I spent the time talking games with number 3 and laughing it up at number 5, a PS2 camp veteran, poor soul, who made a point to convey his annoyance to the drive-by gawkers, either with words alone or giving them the finger. And it's here that I have to come clean to all of you. The entire launch recap video series up to this point has been adapted from old columns that I wrote for AMP News leading up to the Xbox 360 launch going on 18 years ago, and archive.org appears to have lost, or rather never archived, the third and final page of this piece. So I'm going to have to recall the rest of this experience entirely from memory because I have no idea where the hard drive is today containing the original text. At one point, one of my coworkers from KB Toys arrived to camp after her shift and updated me on the situation at the store. The price-gouged bundles were not a hit, and the expected wave of pre-orders never came as a result. She herself arrived while there were still chairs available to reserve a system, though well outside the luxury of choice between a black or purple GameCube, with the front half of the line overwhelmingly speaking for the former, so it was nice to know I didn't show up early for nothing. About an hour before we were called inside, there was a loud bang across the parking lot that turned out to be a head-on collision on Main Street. It was pretty severe as there was no stoplight at the intersection at the time to either slow traffic down or improve visibility. Some of us who could tag out of our seats went to naturally gawk as the Lifelight helicopter arrived. Others stayed put and continued to talk games, conversations that would continue as we were called inside and gathered in the eatery simply called The Grill. It's now a Subway. Walmart had a TV set up, and rather than sensibly demoing the GameCube, they connected a DVD player and started up Shrek at an annoyingly high volume, which didn't make the younger kids present any more bearable and made it nearly impossible to sneak in a nap before midnight. My mom and I passed the time mostly talking about the launch games with some of the other campers, and occasional breaks to the electronics department to play the Wave Race Blue Storm demo throughout, just to get away from the noise. Once midnight finally arrived, we were ushered over to electronics in small groups to keep traffic in the store manageable. Being fourth in line, I was in the first wave. I picked up my GameCube and started out of the store with my mom, only to find that in the 2 hours since we'd been brought into the store, the heavens had parted, and honestly, while rain is very common in my part of Utah at this time of year, I could probably count on one hand the number of times I've seen it this bad since moving to Logan in 1988. Thankfully, another shopper offered us a ride, which we accepted despite my initial residual trust issues surrounding system launches and other people. It was a long way back to the house, and a waterlogged GameCube wouldn't be any good to me anyway. I got home, and I made sure to at least play some Wave Race before going to bed. The irony, given the turn the weather had taken, was not lost on me. Still, it was just a little bit of gaming before I had to get some sleep before work. I woke up with a sore throat and a stuffy nose, since obviously we were all outside for a long time, and just by the law of averages there had to be some sick people in the crowd camping at Walmart. Still, I needed the money if only to catch up on PS2 and Dreamcast games that I missed out on while saving up for the Xbox and GameCube, so I went to work unloading freight well into the night and learned that we had sold a number of GameCubes that day totaling 0. I hope news found its way back to corporate that the overpriced bundle was such a blunder that at least 2 of the employees of that store opted to get their systems at Walmart, although little did I know at the time that the chain wouldn't live to see another system launch in order to apply the lesson. I would actually be back as an employee in 2003 to help close the store down. I did have my boss ring me up for a copy of Star Wars Rogue Leader before we all left, since I wanted at least something to play from time to time despite my GameCube clearly being a Wave Race box for the time being, at least until Pikmin and Smash dropped the following month, and this seemed to be a decent stand-in for Star Fox on the launch, which seems to be a good place to end the story. Obviously, getting sick really sucked because I still had to go in the next day to exchange my Xbox per the previous video, but it was certainly an interesting experience all around and would prepare me for other rapid-fire launches in the future, specifically the PS4 and Xbox One. That's all for now. If you like this video, then be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe as it really helps the channel out. Click the notification bell if you really want to know right when the next video drops. Until next time, I'm Patrick Mifflin, sounding off.